spin-off of The Conjuring, and it's about two priests and a young nun that go into Romania in 1952 after they learn that a nun at a convent committed suicide, and they go to investigate that death, and they find out that there is some paranormal activity going on, and they try to investigate what this supernatural being may be. Now, I'm really a huge fan of the Conjuring movies. I think that they're the two scariest movies I have ever seen. And yes, that is coming from somebody who has seen The Exorcist. I was really looking forward to The Nun. I wanted to be scared. For the majority of this movie, I was bored. The Nun is a messy movie. I hate to say it. I was very let down by this movie. This movie is a mess. It's not awful, like the first Annabelle, but, I mean, I can't say anything about Annabelle 2, because I haven't seen Annabelle Creation, but it's nowhere near the greatness of The Conjuring or The Conjuring 2. And that's kind of a damn shame, because this had the potential to be a really unique movie, and I feel like the way they went about this was that this was a mandatory movie. This wasn't just somebody coming up with an idea for The Nun. This was Warner Brothers being like, alright, well, we did Annabelle, now you introduce this thing in The Conjuring 2, we gotta make a movie out of that. And when you introduce another demonic being or supernatural entity in the third one, we're gonna do a spin-off of that. So there you go. That's your Conjuring universe. To me, this is a franchise, the Conjuring movies, that don't need spin-off movies. They should just stand on their own. I don't need a movie about the demon nun Valak, because I feel like this kind of ruins the mystery as to who that is. This movie is so full of exposition. There are so many scenes of exposition just telling you. It's showing you, but it's also telling you with voiceovers. I'm like, the best way to do an exposition scene is to show, not tell. They're telling you almost everything as you watch it unfold. Why not just watch it unfold in a flashback instead of telling us what's going on in these scenes? That's a far more effective way of doing exposition. There is a lot of that use of exposition in this movie, and I think it's just kind of a lazy way to explain to audiences this is what happened. Like, it's almost like this movie's trying to be more clever than it actually is, and is treating the audience like they're dumb. We're not dumb, okay? Like, we can figure this out if you just show us. You don't have to tell us everything. That's my huge issue with The Nun. There's too much exposition, and the narrative and the story really have inconsistencies in them. Lore is set up, and then that lore isn't followed through, and the lore just changes. This lore is established very inconsistently. There were times where I was like, it can't do that. And I was like, wait a minute, it can't do that. Oh, so we're just changing the rules of the game here. That's not how this works. You establish something, you stick to that. You can't just branch off into so many different directions, which is what I feel that this movie did. And it did it too much, and it was very, very inconsistent, and at times hard to follow. This movie was also putting me to sleep. For the first half of it, I was like, oh, come on, something happened. Come on, something happened. And something finally does happen, and it happens to be an exposition scene with the backstory of Demian Bashir's character. I'm like, what does this have to do with anything? And that really plays into the inconsistency in the writing. I think there's a lot going on in this movie that doesn't have to go on in this movie. And then it tries to connect those inconsistencies back to the main plot to make them consistent, but it's even more inconsistent. That's an issue. That was really hard to overlook in this movie, and it kind of bugged me. Luckily, the last 30 minutes of this movie are pretty jump-scary. It's mostly jump scares in this movie. I did jump for a few scenes, I'll give them that. It's mostly jump scares. It's not really anything scary, which was disappointing because Valak really scared me in The Conjuring 2. I walked out of this just being like, I mean, I jumped. That was it. I'm not going to have a hard time falling asleep at night like I did at the end of The Conjuring 2, or when I watched Hereditary. Oh my god. That movie. I don't have that feeling with this movie, and these characters are just really, really hollow, on top of flat performances, really. Thaisa Farmiga does a good job with what she's given, but There's nothing to her character. I feel as if Demian Bashir is really over the top in this movie, and the French guy, what the hell does he play? He's comedic relief. For most of the movie, it maintains that dark, spooky, creepy, disturbing atmosphere, but then when this character comes on, it's almost like he's cracking jokes, and I'm like, this isn't what this movie needs. You don't need a character to be cracking jokes and be the comedic relief in a movie like this. Almost every scene he was in, the audience was laughing. I wasn't laughing. Its attempts at humor aren't that great. I gave a few chuckles, but I wasn't LOLing like the rest of the audience was. I didn't really understand that aspect, why they chose to add some humor into here. I mean, maybe it was to make light of the situation. I mean, I don't know. That didn't flow very well for me. Now, I'm not saying this movie is entirely bad. There's no denying that this movie is very well directed. It's very well shot. It's got great production design. The way 1952 looks in Romania and all throughout the rest of the world at that time period is really amazing. The costume design really captures the look and feel of what they wore back in the 1950s. And I gotta give it up for the use of practical effects mostly over CGI. CGI is here, but it's minimal, and it's there when it's needed, and the practical effects are done really well. And I'll give the last 30 minutes of the movie credit, because that's where it was actually getting a little creepy, and it had a lot of jump scares in there, and despite not being a fan of jump scares, I think that that's where the movie is most effective. But even the jump scares, it was mostly just, oh, dark imagery in a hallway, here comes a hand, oh my god, what was that? That's basically what it was. They give the nun a really good theme, this haunting theme, but I mean, other than that, I can't look past the fact that I feel like this movie was just made because it was mandatory. The studio demanded it. It's a movie that's very inconsistent in its writing. It's a movie that has very hollow characters with performances that are very flat or feel over the top. And it doesn't really do anything to scare me further than what the character did in The Conjuring 2. It also is a very boring movie for the first half of the movie, despite some dark imagery. And its use of exposition becomes very cliched in this movie. And there are so many scenes that use it, and it just gets annoying after a while. This is a very disappointing movie. I expected a lot more from a movie in the Conjuring universe. I really hope that The Conjuring 3 doesn't go down this road, especially with the fact that the two writers who wrote the first two aren't going to be writing the third one. That gets me a little worried, and I hope it doesn't end up like this, because I'm going to give The Nun a C-. Very disappointing, despite its production values, its writing, performances, exposition, and just uneventful first half kind of just make this a bland horror movie. That's my review of The Nun. Have you guys seen The Nun? I want some feedback. Drop me a comment in the comments section below, and I will leave the URL to my website in the description below as well. You can click on that, and there you will find my links to my social media accounts. You guys are the best. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned for more content very soon. My name is Alex Madden, a certified G and a bona fide stud.